Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day, all Bills all the time. And now Matt Beauvais and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
Wake up, football fans. Your hibernation is over. It is football season. The regular season is finally upon us. It is here. We've made it. It's been a long offseason, the longest offseason in all professional sports, but it's so worth the wait as we get rolling with week number 1 this weekend. Welcome to It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. I think our first official regular season podcast of the season. Sal Capaccio, Matt Beauvais. I am fired up. I was hoping there were games this weekend. We had college. That's good. So you got some college all weekend. I love it. Kind of, get you a little bit percolating in there, Matt. But man, I was ready to have week number 1, and I am so ready for this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I saw a meme on Instagram, and it was basically, like D-Generation X WWE, and it was like me to my family for the next 160 days of football season. Goodbye. I'm not going to probably see you very much. It's like, sorry, I can't commit to anything on a Thursday night. I can't commit to anything on Sunday at all. Monday nights are also kind of murky. So yeah, if you were a football fan, this is the perfect time of year. And also, I might say, the first couple days of September in Western New York, elite weather. I know it's a little cold for your liking, but I was all aboard the 65 and sunny train.
Okay, so that's what's going to be pretty much, we think, on Sunday. I've been monitoring this weather. Of course, I have to because of being on the sidelines. We're going to be in the 80s like Thursday and Friday, and then all of a sudden Saturday, bam, huge cold front comes in. There's rain coming Saturday. I think the way it's looking right now that the rain might be gone by game time on Sunday, which is good. Might be some lingering showers. But, Matt, we're looking at highs around 62 degrees and maybe in Orchard Park, even less than that.
Sounds lovely. Sounds
perfect.
Like put on a hoodie. I mean, not us. We're working. But if you're going to the game, put on a hoodie, put on a pair of shorts, enjoy, tailgate. There's going to be people out there on Saturday. They're getting ready. I mean, there are very few days in Western New York, if you were a Bills fan, better than the home opener. It is unequivocally a top 5 day in Buffalo, the home opener day. So the fact that it's actually to start the season and not a weird week 2 thing like they've had the last couple of years, one of the best days of the year.
Yeah, it totally is. I agree with you. And you know what I always love? I always say this, when the schedule comes out, I want afternoon games in September and October at home because I think Orchard Park looks awesome on TV.
It does.
During, when it's on NBC or ABC or CBS or ESPN or whatever, they have the shot, and it's not the night games, the afternoon games, and you see the foliage in Orchard Park. It's not a downtown, right? We know that the stadium's not downtown. I just think it looks awesome. And when you have those really nice warm days, it just really shines through. So we're going to get one of those days on Sunday. And then who knows beyond that, because we have a night game coming up a couple weeks after that in Orchard Park, a Monday night football game, an early Monday night football game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Bills have 2 games in 5 days to start the season. So it's going to go bam, 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 bam. We're going to be getting after it right away here. So let's start with it. Let's talk about what's going to happen week number 1. Let's start with what we're monitoring this week, Matt. As far as injuries are concerned, let's go back several weeks ago. A bunch of guys start popping up on the injury report. We know Matt Milano is going to be out long-term. We understand that. But at this point, remember what Sean McDermott had said a couple weeks ago. He wouldn't rule anybody else out week number 1. And in fact, I would say from my vantage point, from what we saw last week at practice, things were trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I think so too. I am not that concerned about the wide receivers. I think Curtis Samuel is going to be good to go. I think MVS is probably trending in that direction, but of the two, not as concerned about him just because I don't think he's got as big of a role as Curtis Samuel is concerned. Really, the only big injury that I'm monitoring this week is Mitch Trubisky, but I'm really not even monitoring that now that they have Mike White. I think that they're just going to elevate Mike White from the practice squad, and he's going to be your backup quarterback, and you really hope that you don't need to see Mike White on the field. But from an injury standpoint, after a pretty banged-up summer, they're pretty healthy right now. The caveat here is no Matt Milano. They had a massive injury, but we know he's the one guy that's not going to be there.
So there is a difference, though, between healthy enough to play and being able to play effectively, right? Well, they're not going to put people on the field they don't think at least can help them, but there's going to be a big thing to kind of watch here with Mike Edwards, Cole Bishop, MVS, Curtis Samuel, all these guys. Like, there's one thing to say, yeah, they're healthy enough to play, but I'm concerned and wondering how effective they're going to be given how much time they've missed. I think that's a big thing we all have to be wondering about as well.
Yeah, it is. I was having this conversation. I had my fantasy football draft over the weekend, and after the draft, we sit around a fire and we're just talking about the Bills and the season and all these different football topics. And a lot of them were like, I wish they would have played more in the preseason for simply the fact of I don't think they're going to be on the same page. I understand the risk that comes with it. It was basically like, I wish we saw more of everybody else besides Josh, because I think that's where all the questions lie. I understand that, but we've talked about this on the podcast before. I think the Cardinals are going to be shaking off a little bit of rust too.
That's right.
So it's a bigger picture for the entire year, because then you're going right up against Miami a couple days later. So it's relevant there. But for week one specifically, I'm not really concerned about them being not on the same page or the rust, just because the Cardinals are also kind of going into this without a lot of reps for their main guys. And they're also a little bit banged up as well.
0 reps for their starters basically through all of preseason. Kyler Murray, James Conner, Marvin Harrison Jr., key players on their defensive side of the ball. I'll give you another injury to monitor, and this is more of a storyline standpoint. Balin Spector, whatever his health is, might determine if Joe Andreessen gets a game day jersey or not, Matt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we've said, I don't think Joe Andreessen would be playing on defense. I think if he gets a jersey, he's going to be a special teams contributor, and that's pretty much it. Very much like the Tyler Matakevich role for the last couple of years. But Balin Spector is another one of those guys who just hasn't been healthy. So that's why right now, this complete guess, this is speculation. I think Joe Andreessen is going to play. I think they're going to have Joe Andreessen on the field as one of those special teams contributors, and I think they're going to take their time with Balin Spector, because Balin Spector has probably more of a chance to contribute defensively than Joe Andreessen does, at least right away. Totally fine. But I think they're going to try and get him a little bit healthier and let Andreessen handle those special teams duties.
The Bills take on the Arizona Cardinals 1 p.m. Sunday in Orchard Park. Before, I think it was after we talked last time. I'm not sure. We can try and go back and figure it out. But either way, I don't think we spent much time on Lewis Cine. Lewis Cine was signed by the Bills on the practice squad, and this is a player who was a first-round pick a couple of years ago by the Minnesota Vikings, the same draft as Kyrie Elam. And really, his career arc is a bit similar because he just hasn't been able to get on the field. Although with him, partly because he suffered a really massive leg injury 4 games into his rookie season. But if you talk to people in Minnesota, they'd say, look, he also just wasn't winning a job anyway. And that really set him back even further. Now they let go of him. There were rumblings he was going to sign with the Jets. Suddenly he does a pivot, signs with the Bills. His college coach, Jamil Adai, is one of the Bills' secondary coaches. So what do you think about Lewis Cine? Does it represent anything for you with Lewis Cine being signed to the Bills practice squad?
It represents the representation, or excuse me, the reputation that they have with developing safeties, because this has been a team that has had great safety play for the last several years. Now, to the credit of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, they deserve most of it because they were exceptional. But to the Bills' credit, for as a staff, Jordan Poyer was not Jordan Poyer when the Bills signed him. Micah Hyde, they didn't even know what position he was going to probably play. And then they put him there, and it worked out. So I think this team does a good job developing safeties. I think Sean's system is one that allows them to have success. I think Bobby Babich, from his time with the safeties, understands the position and how to get the most out of them. They're banking on athleticism. And I think he picked the Bills because there might be a clearer path to the field than there would be with some of the other teams that were probably trying to get him. I mean, I know right now it's Taylor Rapp, it's Cole Bishop, it's Mike Edwards, it's all these guys. The only one who I would say definitely is part of their long-term future plans is Cole Bishop. Everybody else is just kind of, we'll see what they do, and then we'll reevaluate them as we move forward.
I agree. And it's tough because they didn't get the proper evaluation on all these guys because of the injuries that they had. So they're going to have to really get through this as they go with that particular group. All right. Well, speaking of Bobby Babich, there was also some news on the coaching front this week.
All right. So, I mean, is it a surprise? I don't think it's a surprise. You've been calling it since he was hired in February or whenever he was ultimately hired. But I believe Buffalo News, they were the ones who reported, Ryan O'Halloran, that Bobby Babich is trending towards being the defensive play caller. Not a shock.
Wasn't trending. He was official. It was, they had quotes from Sean McDermott saying it's happening.
So there you go. It's happening. Not a shock, but relevant. Like, that's an important decision and one that's, I think, the right one.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, I think it was always trending this way. It was going to be, and I've said since the beginning, like you said, I've been talking about this, and the reason I've always said it is because Bobby Babich could have gone to other places to be a defensive coordinator. I know for sure that he had other offers. He decided to come back to Buffalo. That told me that he probably was given the caveat of, look, you come to Buffalo, the carrot of, you come to Buffalo, you're going to be the play caller. Now, of course, Sean McDermott could still reserve the right to say that's not going to be the case once he signs on the dotted line and he's his coach. But they've been together since 2017. They know each other very well. He understands what he wants. And Matt, I think throughout all of camp and preseason, I'm pretty sure he was the only guy doing it. Sean basically talked a lot about Bobby doing it through practices. Bobby talked about him wanting more of those duties during practices. He called it during the games. So to me, there was really never a moment where I doubted that Bobby Babich was going to be the defensive play callers. Are there going to be times where there's going to be growing pains? Absolutely. But Bobby Babich has turned out all pros at safety, all pros at linebacker, got Tremaine Edmonds paid at linebacker, turned Terrell Bernard in 1 year, and nobody really knew what he was until to do what he did last year. And we all know he was fantastic, playing the Mike linebacker spot. I think the guy at least deserves the benefit of the doubt. Plus, he's got the bloodlines. His dad was a defensive coordinator, which is an interim head coach. His dad was the defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears team that went to the Super Bowl against Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts. I think Bobby Babich has earned this opportunity, and I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt to see what he can do here.
My question, though, is how long is the leash? What growing pains are acceptable before Sean McDermott decides that he needs to interject? Or does he say, going into the year, you're calling the plays? If it's good, if it's bad, this is all on you. So that's, I think, the question with Bobby Babich. What if the defense has a bad day? I mean, we saw at times Leslie Frazier was there. Correct me if I'm wrong. Sean would take over, and then it wouldn't stay permanent. But at times, Sean would take over. And with somebody who's doing this for the first time at this level, I don't know. I think that you should let somebody learn on the job. I think that's your best way of getting the reps. It's your best way of getting experience. But the stakes are really high. This isn't a team that people think is going to win 4 or 5 games where you can just say, you're going to do it all year no matter what happens. What if things get a little dicey and you start to face some adversity? Does Sean take it back and then give it back again? I don't know, but I feel like once you take it once, it's really hard to go from taking it to then giving it back again.
I agree with that. I think that his leash would be longer than Leslie Frazier in that instance because Leslie had so much equity built up that if you took it, you can give it back. And I don't think there's an issue there. Whereas what you said is right. I kind of look at it like young quarterbacks. If you start a guy and then you take him out, it's hard to go back to that guy. You already showed you don't have faith in him, right? So I think Sean has to kind of give this as much breath as possible to allow this to work with Bobby Babich. It's going to be very, very interesting. I'll say this about Bobby Babich. I think you'd agree. He's great in press conferences. This guy has a head. He has head coach material written all over as far as how he treats the media and talks to the media, at least.
I think Bobby Babich is a star in the making.
Yeah.
I really do. I really think that at some point in his career, he's going to be an NFL head coach. I think he's just wired the right way. He's got the NFL pedigree. I think the biggest thing with Bobby Babich is the proof is in the pudding from just an actual performance standpoint, but these guys adore him. His position players love him. I know the coordinators are usually the good cops and the head coaches are often the bad cop, but it feels like these dudes would run through a wall for that guy. And I'm not saying that's the only thing that matters, but it definitely matters. His safeties played hard for him. His linebackers played hard for him. And now I think the entire defense is just going to have a different level of a swagger that they have not had. No disrespect to Leslie Frazier. No disrespect to Sean McDermott. It's different playing for a guy with that much energy. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we see that we're not allowed to report, different conversations and things that we watch happen at practice. Like this guy has unlimited juice and is not afraid to talk his crap. Usually he backs it up. I can't tell you what I'm referring to specifically, but like this guy is not lacking confidence and he's never even done the job before. And I think they love that.
Yeah, he's a very athletic family as well. Not just his dad, his kids are all, he's so involved in their sports and the athletics that go along with it. It's just great to see. Bobby's just really ingratiated himself to this community in the time that he's been here since 2017 with Sean McDermott.
Nice word.
It's incredible.
Ingratiated himself.
I like
Look
that.
at you. Look at you.
Don't ask me to spell it. Now, somebody sent me something that said, "Hey, Sal, this is a picture of," I don't have it with us to show on the video stream here, but somebody sent me a picture. It said, "Hey, Sal, this is the Playboy All-American team from 1968. They used to have that. I don't know if they still do or not. And there was a Bob Babich, linebacker, Miami of Ohio. He said, is that Bobby's dad, Bob? I said, no, because Bob Babich Sr. was born in 1961. He would have been 7 years old when this picture came out. So I did a little research. There was another Bob Babich, completely unrelated, that is in the College Football Hall of Fame, that was born in the 40s and played in the 60s.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So, but no relation at all?
No relation.
Oh, okay.
It's amazing.
Well, something
And he
in the
played
name.
linebacker.
Something in the name.
I
It's
guess
funny
so.
you said completely not side topic, like completely unrelated, but somebody tweeted or posted on X at me the other day. There are jars of sauce that say Beauvais on them at all of the local supermarkets. No relation. It's some family in Vermont who sells their sauce. And they're like, "Is this you?" I was like, "I wish," because they're probably doing great. But no, it's not me. It's a good fallback option, I guess.
Well, people send me pictures of carpaccio on menus all the time, although my
Yeah.
name has no R in it, everybody, but I'll take it. Speaking of X, at Sal Sports, at Matt_Beauvais, that's where you can find us. Also, do not forget, we are on video. It's that season, right? Go subscribe to the YouTube channel, Sal Sports on YouTube. So much content and stuff there for you, for the Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast and a lot of other things. And of course, wherever you podcast. Matt, week number 1 gets rolling. By the next time we talk to everybody, there's going to be an NFL game played already. It's going to be the Baltimore Ravens at the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, put your Bills fan hat on, Matt. Who do you want to win this game?
The Ravens Chiefs?
Yeah. If you're a Bills fan, who should you be rooting for?
How about this? The Chiefs. You're rooting for the Chiefs in this game. I know you
Okay.
hate the Chiefs, but the Chiefs are
Go
getting
ahead.
the Chiefs are getting into the playoffs. The
Uh-huh.
Ravens are in the much tougher division. So you want the Ravens to have a loss, because if it all comes down to it, I think they're the team that you are more competing with to get into the playoffs than the Chiefs. I don't think there's a team in the AFC West that's really competing with the Chiefs. I think there's legitimately 3 teams in the AFC North that could win the division.
I think I agree with your overall sentiment, although it's tough for Bills fans to say that, because the only reason why you'd think that it's better for the Ravens to win is if you think you're competing for the 1 seed with the Chiefs. And I don't know if people think that right now about the Bills, right?
No.
Competing for the 1 seed. So I agree that it might come down to, hey, of all the other teams outside of the Chiefs, because the Chiefs are going to win the division most likely, certainly going to probably be in the playoffs. Of all the other teams in the AFC, give as many of them losses as possible, right? That would be the theory.
Oh, absolutely. I just think that a couple years ago, this would be a different answer. You would be saying, no, we want the 1 seed. Like, we want the Chiefs to lose as many games as possible. We want to have every tiebreaker imaginable with them. It's also a really good team, too. It's 2 really good teams. Last year, it's an obvious, okay, you root for the NFC team. It's no big deal. Once again, though, the Chiefs start in the hole and they end up still winning the Super Bowl. In this game, the Chiefs are slightly favored. I think the Ravens are going to win. I do. And I think Bills fans, should be rooting the other way. But I know it's the first game of the season and you want the Chiefs to struggle. And I totally get that. And I totally understand why.
Lions did go into Kansas City and beat them week 1 last year on a Thursday night. Let's remember that to open the season.
Okay. So last year, Lions go into Kansas City, beat them week 1. 2 years ago, the Bills go into LA on the road, beat them week 1. So it's not unprecedented for the visiting team to come in and knock off the guys who just won the Super Bowl. It's not crazy unheard of.
All right, we're going to run through a little bit more of what's going to happen or what we expect to happen throughout the season here as week 1 is upon us in the National Football League. Bills take on the Cardinals at home in Orchard Park, 1 p.m. Matt Beauvais, Sal Capaccio. It's always game day in Buffalo. All right, Matt, here we go. Let's talk about the overall picture of the season, because I've seen everything from Bills are Super Bowl contenders to the Bills are going to take a major step back. In fact, there was a simulation done by Seth Waller and ESPN that had the Bills at 7-10 on this season. 7-10.
Like that was one of the simulations, or that was the final simulation of
the final simulation. I believe they did. I mean, they might have done more, but they wrote an article about they simulated the season.
Okay.
And there were 2 teams that the headline, like the first thing I read when I opened it was some surprises. First of all, 2 teams that did not live up to expectations. Bills and Falcons. Had the Falcons not taking a step like a lot of people feel, and the Bills at 7-10, and said the lack of a number 1 wide receiver forced them to lean on the run game a little bit too much, and they just couldn't overcome it.
Okay. It's not impossible, but I don't agree with it. I think of the Bills going into the season as having the ceiling of a team that can win the Super Bowl and the floor of the team that can miss the playoffs, which I know is a massive range. But the reason I say that is because I have not felt that way in the last several years. A year ago, I would have said, I think that they're a Super Bowl contender, and I think their worst case scenario is a wild card team. I feel like the worst case scenario this year is worse, just because there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of players who have left. There's questions at wide receiver. You've got questions at safety. You've got questions at linebacker. Now, because of another Matt Milano injury, you've got questions at coaching with two new full-time coordinators, and Sean McDermott, who has been a good regular season coach, but has not lived up to the expectations in the postseason. There are a lot of questions with this team. The one thing I don't have a question on is Josh Allen. I legitimately think he is the second best player in the NFL. And I think when that guy is your quarterback, you have a chance to win every single time you step on the field in every single scenario that you're in. And the playoffs, give me Josh Allen. I think he can go toe-to-toe with anybody. So for me, I think that there's a lot of different ways this season can play out. I find myself thinking that they're a playoff team, but I also find myself thinking they don't win the division. So not to give away give away any big secrets or anything, but like, I think they make the playoffs and they get hot at the end of the season, but I think they lose the division for the first time in 4 years. I think I think the Jets are going to win the AFC East.
I was going to say, wait on that. I wanted to ask you, who you have. So you have the Jets. We'll get back to that in a second. I do think the Bills will win the division because I do not trust Aaron Rodgers to stay healthy all year. And we've never seen this, even if he does stay healthy.
Big caveat. I know.
Even if he does stay healthy, though, I don't really know what to expect from him. He's 40 years old coming off the ACL. And even the year before he tore his ACL last year, Achilles. I said ACL twice. My bad.
Yeah.
Achilles, even before that, was statistically not a great year. He could be amazing. And we know they have a great defense. We know they have Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Outside of Garrett Wilson, I'm not really sure who else they have at wide receiver. They don't really have a great offensive line. So I do think there's some questions even beyond the actual health of Aaron Rodgers if he does stay healthy. In Miami, I've been saying for a while that I just think Miami is the team more likely than Buffalo to even take a step back.
Let me say this, and there's going to be people listening to this. There's going to be people watching this. Matt's so negative, all this stuff. Totally, I get it. It comes with the territory. I'll tell you this, though. I think the Bills will go farther than the Jets. I think the Jets could be the team that wins the division. I think this is a year. I always say sometimes you win when you're not exactly expecting to win. I think about the Rams a couple years ago. Like they go to the Super Bowl with McVay and Goff, and then it doesn't work out, and they kind of start over, and then they end up back in the Super Bowl. And it's like, how the heck did that happen? The Bucs is a little bit of a weird situation because it's Tom Brady. Like you got maybe the best player ever, but I don't think people thought they were going to make the Super Bowl. I just think people thought that they were going to be better than they had been in years past. And then they go and they end up winning the Super Bowl. Even this year in December, not really anybody thought that the Chiefs were good enough to go win a Super Bowl again. We watched them lose on Christmas Day to the Raiders, to like Aiden O'Connell. And you're like, well, maybe this is the year that they're just not that good. And then they still ended up winning the Super Bowl. So I think there's less pressure on the Bills this year. And I think oddly, they will thrive because of it once the games really start to matter.
So you're saying Bills, Jets in the playoffs, Bills go to New York and beat them. Jets win the division. Bills go to New York. They beat them in the playoffs and go further.
No, what I think would happen.
Okay.
I think the Bills could be like the 6 seed, right? I think like they could get into the playoffs and maybe the Jets or the
I mean, nobody would want to play them. If the Bills are the 6, you're still like, oh, I don't, or the 7, right? No matter who you're playing, the other team's like, dude, they have Josh Allen, right?
They might be the second most dangerous playoff team.
That's
right.
100% right.
It's probably Mahomes, and then it's probably Allen, regardless of the seed that they fall in. So to me, it really doesn't make a difference. If you're not the 1 seed, which they have not been, it really doesn't make a difference to me. If you got to go on the road, if you got to play at home, like I know you'd rather play at home, you'd rather have a really favorable matchup. Like I said, I think Josh Allen can beat anybody any day. Like, what if this year the Ravens are the 1 seed and the Chiefs are the 2 seed and the Bills are the 7 seed? They won't be favored, but I really do, unless I'm crazy, think that they can go in Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs. I think eventually they'll do it.
I think all of that is very fair. I could see a scenario where the Jets, or even the Dolphins, even independent of what I said, despite what I said, I could see the Dolphins winning the division if they did stay healthy and that offense just is clicking and Mike McDaniel finds new ways. And, that defense they have, I think their defense, it's going to be tough. They have a 3rd defensive coordinator in the last few years. They lost a lot of star power on defense. There's still injuries over there. That's why I think the Dolphins, to me, aren't going to be a team that's going to be challenging when it comes time. And then towards the end of the year, they play like 3 or 4 cold weather games starting around Thanksgiving, Green Bay, the Jets, Cleveland. So that's why I have them there. But I just think the Bills still have the best quarterback. And even if Rodgers is healthy, there's questions about that. The Bills have the best quarterback. They still have a very good coaching staff, obviously. They have the pedigree to get there, even though there have been changes. And I just think the Bills are still the team to beat in the AFC and AFC East. And by the way, the Bills are favored to win the AFC East. That's no surprise, right? Let me get you the odds. Yeah, let's go. I'll tell you exactly what it is. Here we go. Bills AFC East. I have it right here.
I looked it up I looked it up last night. They have the seventh best odds to win the Super Bowl.
They do. Well, actually, now it's kind of flipped a little bit. Looks like the Jets have now passed the Bills, my apologies, as the favorite to win the AFC East in most books. Although not everywhere. They're about the same. The Bills are favored in a couple books. The Jets are favored in some books. Looks like the Jets have a little bit more of a lean on being the favorite to win the AFC East at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ifs with the Jets, but the ifs for the Jets to me are more just like random coin flips. To me, it's like, hey, is Aaron Rodgers stay healthy? To me, my Bills ifs are, do they have enough weapons? And if they do, are they going to be able to, replace Stephon Diggs? Like, I don't know. My questions with the Bills are a little bit more football related. My question with the Jets are injury related. They've got an old offensive line. Is it good enough to protect him? If Aaron Rodgers isn't healthy, the Jets are going to do the exact same thing they did last year, where they're going to be a tough team, but I don't think that they're going to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. If you tell me right now Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, that's why I'm just betting he does. That's why I think I'll take the Jets. But if you were like, hey, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to play the full season, then I would switch to the Bills, because I do think it's close. I mean, I'm talking about the Bills finishing like 10-7 and the Jets finishing 11-6.
Well, that would be my next question. Where you go if you think the Bills, let's say to take the Jets to win the division, is it like by tiebreaker? Is it, hey, the Jets win 12 games? Is it, the Bills just fall short and win 8 or 9?
I'm between for the Bills, and it depends on the day you ask me. 9-8 and 10-7.
I think the over under Vegas is 10.5 right now.
Yeah, and I look at that schedule and I go, man, it's tough. Yep. But then I try and remind myself that every year somebody who's good ends up not being good, and somebody who's bad ends up being good. So it's a little too early to know. We can't forecast injuries. Like last year when the schedule came out and you looked at the Chargers game in December and you're like, ooh, that's a tough game. Going on the road a couple days before Christmas, going against Justin Herbert. And then Justin Herbert gets hurt. And then it's like the Chargers are one of the worst teams in the league. Still almost lost to them.
Almost lost.
But that game changes
East
a lot.
Stick.
You also look at the schedule at times last year and you go, okay, well, we're going to play the Patriots. Like, they'll go on the road and they'll get right against the Patriots. No, they didn't. So sometimes games you think are going to be easy don't end up being easy. So yeah, I would say right now, I guess I'm on a good day today. I think the Bills are a 10-7 football team. They have the potential to be better than that. I don't think they have the potential to be much better than that, at least in the regular season. And I think the floor is probably like 8 and 9. That's what I would say the floor is.
So to your point about the schedule, it's absolutely brutal. We know that. The odds to win the AFC generally in most sports books: Chiefs, Ravens, Bengals, Texans, Bills. 5th best odds in the AFC, which, okay, that's not too bad. If you're talking 5 seed, as you said, dangerous. But the Bills play out of that group: Chiefs, Ravens, Texans, 3 of them, and then the Jets twice who are right behind them, the Dolphins twice who are right behind them. I mean, holy cow, Matt, you're talking about all of the top teams in the AFC that are at least perceived to be top teams in the AFC pretty much. The Bills don't play the Bengals, obviously, this year in the regular season. The Browns are mixed in there a little bit. They don't play them this regular season, but everybody else is on their schedule. It's going to be a really tough road. And I would say overall, we're going to find out a lot about this team over the first 6 weeks. That's why week number 1 to me is so vitally important. If the Bills win, I'll say it the other way. If the Bills are to drop week 1 to the Arizona Cardinals, I think we're in probably for a longer season than we could anticipate, because then you got Dolphins, Jags, Ravens, Texans, Jets. If the Bills win the first game, you can still drop 2 of the next 5 and you would still be 3-2. I'm sorry, 4-2. You'd be 4-2 then, coming out of that, going to play Tennessee, Seattle, Miami, Indy. I think that's doable. If the Bills are 4-2 after their first 6, I think it's okay.
Would you sign up right now for 3-3? I think I would. I think I would sign up for 3-3.
I don't know if I would.
It's a really interesting, because you think they you would hope they beat Arizona, but nothing's guaranteed. They've been great against Miami, but once again, good team on the road. And the Jags have been annoyingly difficult for the Bills the last couple times that they've played them. So those 3 games right there, it's like, okay, there's no slam dunks. And then you've got the 3 games that are very hard. I think ultimately what happens is they win a game that we don't think they're going to win, and they lose a game that we think they probably should win, and then they end up being 3-3. And I think if that's what you're at, I think that's totally fine.
I think 3-3 might be a little tough. I don't know. I don't know if I'd sign up for it because I'd rather take my chances at 4-2. But 3-3 is still doable considering the rest of the schedule. Like I agree with you in the sense. I think what you're saying is if you're 3-3, you still have a pretty good look at it. Like you're okay. You come out okay. Yeah. To me, I think though, I'd still rather take my chances at trying to go 4-2.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think it's more likely they go 2-4 than 4-2 to start the season, which is why I think I would sign up for 3-3. And then I think if you're 3-3, then you give yourself the window to go on a little bit of a run where you have some games who you would think right now are a little bit more winnable. You mentioned the Titans, you mentioned the Seahawks, you get Miami coming into Buffalo as opposed to going to Miami. Just some games that I think you'd feel a little bit more confident in. But what I ultimately do think is what happens is that they lose one of those first 3 games and everybody freaks out because they lost one. And then they end up winning one of the next 3 games that nobody thought they'd win. And then they get to 3-3. Like, I think, what if they start 2-0 and they lose to the Jags and everybody was like, you needed to win that game. What the heck are you doing? Then you go on the road, you lose to Baltimore. And then you're like, oh no, you're 2-2. You might be 2-3. Then they go beat Houston. And then they're 3-2.
Let me ask you this. Out of the first 5 games, heck, I'll throw in the first 6 because you had the Jets winning the division here. You got the schedule in front of you?
I have the schedule memorized at this point.
Out of the first 6 games, in case everybody doesn't know, home Cardinals, at Dolphins, home Jags, at Ravens, at Texans, at Jets. And by the way, Ravens Sunday night, Jets Monday night, Jacksonville at home Monday night, at Miami Thursday night. Out of those first 6, I would think we'd both agree most confident to beat Arizona, right?
Yes.
Okay, what's your next most confident win?
Miami.
Really? Yeah. For me, it's home against Jacksonville. They're going to have 12 days to get ready for that game.
Yeah. But
11.
Miami's on a short week.
Week, travel. It's Miami, South Florida. Miami's tough. Early in the season, I think it's really tough against Miami because you don't have a book on them yet. They're going to have wrinkles for their offense, all those kinds of things. I'm not saying the Bills are going to lose that game, but I think it's tougher then than it is later.
I think it's close to me. I think it's because Josh has been so good against the Dolphins. I would personally say the Dolphins, and then I would say Jacksonville. Going Arizona the easiest, Miami next, and then Jacksonville. But I think that I would be in the minority. I think most people would say Arizona, Jacksonville, Miami.
After that, I'd actually put the Jets. Then I don't know if I want to go Ravens or Texans, both tough. Maybe Texans. I'm just not. I love CJ Stroud. I'm just not so sold on them yet. I gotta see it again a little more, and then maybe Ravens. But that's tough for me. I think that actually the Dolphins might be my least confident. To be quite honest with you, if I'm doing it, I might have the Dolphins the least confident.
Oh wow, interesting. I think I would go Cardinals. You're the most confident against. Dolphins, Jags, Texans. Like the team, think that they've got a really high ceiling, but also still think it's a little early on them. And then I would do Jets, Ravens. That's the order that I would go. But they can beat any of them. They could also lose to any of them, which is, I think, the moral of the Bill story this year is like, yeah, they can definitely win, but will they? That's what we need to figure out.
Anything else that you want to get to now before the next time we talk, I should say, because we still have some stuff we can talk on Thursday. We'll talk more about the game, obviously. We'll look at week number 1 the next time that we talk here on the podcast as well.
Well, you never set a record. Do you have to hold it until like a reveal this week for anything that you're doing? Do you have a record prediction for them?
I'm going to say 10-7. Look at this is off the cuff. I haven't dug deep into it. 10-7 sounds right for me. I've said 10-7, and that's below their over-under, but I just think their schedule is really tough, and that's actually a decent year for that.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's good enough to win the division, too, by the way. It might come down to a tiebreaker.
Yeah, for sure.
But you can go 10-7. I think the Bills have they have a strong chance to go 5-1 in their division. If they go 4-2, that's okay, but they can go 5-1. They can beat the Dolphins. I mean, they can beat the Patriots twice. They should, right?
Yeah.
And then if you can sweep one of the other teams, which is not easy, you're looking at 5-1.
Well, then here, let me another hypothetical. If you were a Buffalo Bills fan with the questions going into the season, do you sign on the dotted line right now for a 10-7 finish? If you were a fan of the team,
I think so.
I agree. I agree. Because
you're
going to the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to still win the division. And like we've said, just get in with Josh. And that's to, I know I just said 10 minutes ago that I think the Jets win the division.
Mm-hmm.
My take on the Bills this year is that they get into the playoffs and they get hot at the right time and they win more than one playoff game. I'm not suggesting that I think they go to the Super Bowl, but I think that this is a year where there could be growing pains early. They get better as the year goes on. They win a tough game or two at the end of the season that nobody thought they would win. And then they get into the playoffs and then they pull off an upset in the first round and then they pull off another upset. Like, I really think it's not impossible for them to be an AFC championship football team this year. I just don't know if they've got enough to get over either like the Ravens in the playoffs or the Chiefs in the playoffs. They could. I just don't know if they will.
First playoff game. For you, first playoff game you ever remember the Bills in would be the Colts game, right? Because they didn't make it for many years, correct?
Jags.
Oh, that would be the first home game. I'm sorry, home game with the first one you remember would be the Jags because they hadn't made it for 17 years, right?
Yep. Yeah.
First playoff game I ever remember, right? First playoff game I ever remember the Buffalo Bills playing in at the Jets. Divisional round 1981 season. Shea Stadium actually is where they played, where the Mets and Jets both played. Bills returned an opening kickoff fumble for a touchdown.
Oh.
Then they had a big lead. The Jets came back and almost won, but Bill Simpson had an interception to seal it. And the Bills go to the Bengals the next week and lose in the divisional round. Anyway, when you're talking about Bills, Jets, and right there and playoffs, it just got me thinking back to when I was a 7-8-year-old kid watching that.
Give me to close out this episode, we set our prediction record. I want to ask you, who is the Bills player at this time next year we will be talking about in the same way we kind of talk about Terrell Bernard now, where a year ago there was a ton of uncertainty and now it's like, ooh, that guy can play and he's definitely got a role on this team. Do you have a player? I can start since I asked you the question.
Well, my first thought was Keon Coleman, but you go ahead.
I'm going to say Ray Davis. I'm going to say a different Bills rookie. I think Ray Davis is going to have a very big role on this team. And I just like the way he plays. I like the way he looks at practice. I think he looks very effective and efficient. He's a really good pass catcher, and I think that's going to be a big part of this offense moving forward. I just think back to all those times last year when there were guys on the field that shouldn't have been on the field. It's like, oh no, another throw to Latavius Murray. What the heck are you doing? Like this year, I think those are going to be going to Ray Davis, and I think that that's going to be an area where they have a lot of success. I'm really excited about him as a player.
Okay, so I have two actually, because one is a rookie this year, Cole Bishop. I think Cole Bishop, he needs those reps. He gets those reps. I think we're going to be really liking what we see out of him. The other one's actually been around a few years. I think next year at this time, we're talking a lot about Ryan Vandermark being a really interesting, because Spencer Brown's contract is up at the end of this year. And I don't know if that's going to be a little too pricey for the Bills, and Ryan Vandermark could be the new starting right tackle a year from now. It's a year from now, so I don't want to get too deep on that, but yeah, I think that could be a guy we are thinking about.
Any right before the season extensions from the Bills? This has been a Brandon Beane thing the last couple of years.
No,
I agree. I don't think so either. But when you said Spencer Brown, he's the one name I think could potentially make sense.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen. By the way, you ever been sitting around and so suddenly your Alexa goes off? I have to say it that way because if I say her name in my house, she'll go off. Does that ever happen? Like just something happens, she says something?
I don't have an Alexa.
Oh, okay. Well, I do. I have no idea. We didn't say her name, but as we're talking about predictions and what's going to happen for the Bills, literally here in Studio Capaccio, mine went off and said, sorry, I can't help you with that right now. So even she doesn't know what's going to happen for the 2024.
Alexa, come on. We're expecting more out of you.
I know.
Did either you or Mike hear my alarm go off about 15 minutes ago? Did either of you guys hear that? Did it come over on the microphone?
No, I don't think so.
It was an alarm to remind me to do this podcast, and we started about 20 minutes earlier than we anticipated. So the alarm went off. I quickly silenced it, but I'm happy that it did not make its way actually onto the podcast until me talking about it right now.
Okay, listen, folks, we got a lot lined up for you this week. Matt's going to be covering everything for you at WKBW TV Channel 7. They're going to be out at practice telling you everything you need to know on the TV side. I got you covered on the radio side, WGR Sports Radio 550. We got the podcast wherever you pod. Please tell your friends about it. Subscribe to it. It's a brand new year. We'd love to have more and more listeners, more and more subscribers. Wherever you podcast, it's called It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Also, if you're listening, we are on video. We'd love for you to go subscribe to the YouTube channel at Sal Sports. I'm less than 1.4 thousand subscribers away from 10,000. Let's get there. Let's get everybody help us get to 10,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel as well. We're going to have more for you on week number 1. We'll walk through week number 1 and do a little more preview for the Bills and the Cardinals the next time we talk. Thanks to our producer, Mike Robier, always doing a tremendous job. We are here, Matt. We've made it, buddy.
We made it, baby. Let's do it.